Yo, what's up everyone? How are we all doing? Back with another video.
Part 2.
Part 2, man. Hitler Oversimplified. Obviously, it goes without saying, if you haven't watched yesterday's one, go back and check that out. Or watch this one and treat that one as the prologue. I think I've made that joke before, haven't I? Oh, fuck me, I'm running out of jokes.
I enjoyed part 1.
Yeah, part 1 was great. Right, where did we leave off? The war had ended, he got injured.
Yeah.
The Allies... the Axis surrendered, not the Axis, the Germans surrendered. Loads of stuff going on back in Germany, everyone's against each other, communism's on the rise, loads of different political parties.
Yeah.
He left off about there, didn't it? Okay, right.
Yes.
So I guess
I'm sure this will, as soon as it starts, it'll jog our memory.
Yeah, I bet this is the part where it kind of gets to like making the Nazis and the German workers and all that.
Yeah, and I want to see kind of like how, in this next like 8.5 minutes, is it literally for the rest of his life?
That's a good
or is
question.
It just the war? I'm excited to find out.
I don't know. Right, let's have a look.
Since Germany's military had to be reduced, Hitler could no longer remain a soldier after the war, but he kept working for the army as an informant. After the war, communists in Germany had attempted a revolution, and the government was worried about communism in general. So Hitler was tasked with infiltrating and reporting on any new political parties that could pose a communist threat. A new party called the German Workers' Party threw up a whole bunch of red flags, so Hitler went along to one of their meetings, but found that they weren't communist at all. They were extreme right and shared many of his extreme beliefs, so he left the army and signed up to join the party. His fantastic speaking abilities impressed the party's leadership and supporters, and he very quickly rose to the top. He decided the party needed a makeover, so he renamed it to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi for short, and he gave it a new color scheme. The Nazis weren't very specific on policy, but Hitler made extravagant promises to return Germany to its former glory by undoing the Treaty of Versailles and reuniting all ethnic Germans into one nation. He also said that only pure Aryan people should be allowed to be citizens and that all Jews would lose their citizenship. These ideas were already common in extreme right politics, but what set the Nazis apart was Hitler himself, and they quickly became the leading party on the extreme right. Many of the political parties in Germany at the time had paramilitary wings, and the Nazis were no different. Hitler set up the very descriptive Whole Protection Detachment, later changed to the very delightful Gymnastic and Sports Division, and finally settling on the ominous Storm Detachment, or SA for short. Their job was to defend Nazi party meetings and intimidate political opponents, and they would frequently engage in battles with communists on the streets. Since the Allies had demanded a reduction in Germany's military size, many trained soldiers were left unemployed. They liked the Nazi ideology, and it was only natural for them to join the SA, which grew larger and larger over time. The new democratic government that formed after World War I was pretty weak and ineffective. In order to pay reparations to the Allies, it started printing more money. The problem is that printing money doesn't actually give a country more money, it just makes money less valuable. So as the country printed more and more money, it became worth less and less, and the currency crashed. In 1919, $1 was worth about 4 German marks. By December 1923, $1 was equal to 4.2 trillion marks.
What?
The price of bread rose to 200
I remember doing like this in school. I remember seeing when people had to like take wheelbarrows full of money to go and buy a loaf of bread.
Yeah, huge wheelbarrows of money, and when it got there, the shopkeepers wouldn't even count it.
They'd just be like, fuck that.
Yeah, they'd just be like, put it there.
Also, when Hitler's like giving his speeches in this and he's shouting, doesn't he proper give you like Cartman vibes with his eyes?
Yeah, it just reminds me of when you dance and they're just like...
$1 was equal to 4.2 trillion marks. The price of bread rose to 200 billion marks. Banknotes became worthless. Unsurprisingly, in such an economic crisis, Germany struggled to pay the Allies. The French were pissed about this, so they occupied the Ruhr, an area full of factories, and took the economic output from the area as payment. They treated the German civilians badly, and in total, approximately 130 Germans were killed during the occupation. Germans were furious, and Hitler and the Nazis thought that now would be a great time to lead a revolution. In November 1923, inspired by something a certain bold Italian man did a year earlier, Hitler stormed a meeting at a beer hall and called for an uprising against the government. With his supporters, he marched on the streets of Munich, hoping the police would join his side. They did not. Hitler was put on trial for treason. He could have been sentenced to life, but the right-wing judges thought he was a pretty cool guy. Hitler knew the judges and knew that they would be lenient, so he took the opportunity to make impassioned speeches during the trial. And in the end, he was sentenced to just 5 years in prison, of which he only served 9 months. And when I say prison, it was more like a pleasant hotel stay where he had plenty of time to write a book.
I was gonna say that to me
The
about
whole
his
affair
book,
was
innit?
covered by the media nationwide, and it made Hitler famous. Hitler and his extreme message were now known throughout Germany. But the everyday Germans still didn't care much for him. In the 1928 election, the Nazis only won about 2% of the vote. Many were still intimidated by all the violence and the shouting and how unpolitician-like he was. But a new economic crisis would change all of that. To help Germany pay its reparations, America agreed to give it loans. In October 1929, the Wall Street crash happened, and America wanted its money back. The economic strain this put on an already struggling Germany was severe. Unemployment skyrocketed, poverty was widespread, and Germans were sick of it. It was clear that the newly formed democracy wasn't working. In the face of crisis, Germans began moving to the political extremes. If you were German and wanted change, your choices now were either the communists or the Nazis. Hitler claimed that he would...
Who would you pick?
What were the other guys doing that weren't the Nazis?
Oh, it's long. We'll talk about it in another video.
Okay.
I'll tell you after the video because it's just long to explain it. But
Okay, because
communists are the ones
I
that
only
all
know
want,
one side.
the communists, like, they all want people to work for equal pay, and
Oh.
like a lot of it gets taxed and put back into like public.
And nearly was like, absolutely not the other side, but then the other side is a Nazi, so
I mean, yeah.
I think I'd just remain quite neutral, to be
Yeah,
honest.
you know, for the views on this video and the likes versus dislikes, I'd say we keep it neutral. I don't want to get into that one again.
the only one who could return Germany to its former glory. The Nazi Party used propaganda to make Hitler seem like a great and powerful man, and they gave the German people a scapegoat to blame for all their suffering. The promise of a single strong dictator was a breath of fresh air for Germans after years of failing democracy. Some bought into his extreme ideology. Some didn't agree with the racism, but were willing to vote for him anyway. Many didn't know much about politics at all, but just got caught up in the hype. Election after election, the Nazis became more and more popular, until in 1932, they became the biggest party in the German parliament. Hitler came to truly believe that he was some sort of great, destined savior of Germany. He turned megalomaniac. He decided to run for president, and did surprisingly well, but still lost to the extremely popular World War I general, Paul von Hindenburg. Since he was now the leader of the biggest party, though, he demanded President Hindenburg make him chancellor. But Hindenburg was reluctant, seeing that Hitler was clearly such a big racist. Industry leaders urged Hindenburg to give Hitler the chancellorship, fearing the rising support for communism, and leader of the Center Party von Papen, who had been secretly negotiating with Hitler, said to Hindenburg, "How about we make Hitler chancellor on the condition that I get to be vice-chancellor, and most government jobs go to us moderate conservatives? That way, I'll get to keep my power. We'll get to keep our power, and we'll control Hitler like he's our angry little puppet." What could possibly go wrong? As it turned out, everything.
Yeah.
Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933, but he was not yet a dictator. In February, the German Parliament building was set on fire. Historians still aren't sure who did it, and many suspect the Nazis did it themselves, but Hitler blamed the communists, and he convinced President Hindenburg to sign an emergency decree allowing him to imprison all communists and other political opponents. Communists and others were sent off to the first concentration camp in Dachau. At this time, the elderly President Hindenburg passed away, giving Hitler the perfect opportunity. He introduced a law to Parliament that would allow him to make all future laws and decisions entirely on his own. With his political opponents imprisoned and the SA intimidating others, Hitler's law passed. Just 2 months after becoming Chancellor, Hitler was now a dictator.
How, like, I understand, like, it's just explaining the process, but, like, people just really let that happen.
Yeah, well,
Like, you would have thought there would be more fighting against him becoming.
well, I think a lot of it, like today, like your average Joe is a lot more informed than people were back then, isn't it?
Yeah. And I suppose, would they not have known what he was going to do?
Well, I don't think they could have predicted like what he would go on to do.
Yeah.
But like with the whole racist thing, like anti-Semitism, like hate against Jews, was quite high in Europe anyway. And I think the biggest part of that week, like you know when he said about the hype, I think that was a big part of it for most people because you know not a lot of people are into politics to the extent that
Yeah.
other people are, and some people are. You know when we were talking about the EU and you was like, I just didn't know who to vote for.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people would have just listened to people near them. So if they had a lot of people saying vote for Hitler or vote for, the Nazi party.
Yeah, you just think, people I know are doing it, so it must be fine. I'll do it.
Yeah, obviously I wasn't there, but I imagine that would be a big part to play.
Mm.
That's a nice coat though, right? He's a nice coat, man.
Still had one problem. The leader of the SA wanted the SA to take over the job of the regular German army, and the German army didn't like that idea. Hitler needed to maintain the support of his professionally trained German army, more so than his rough and rowdy SA. So one night in June 1934, he had Röhm and many other of his own SA officers rounded up and murdered. While he was at it, he took the opportunity to brutally settle some personal scores as well. Politicians who had disagreed with him in the past, reporters who had printed negative articles about him, one guy who did absolutely nothing, but they thought he was someone else. In some cases, even their families were murdered. In total, up to 200 people were killed in what became known as the Night of the Long Knives. The army, now satisfied that they wouldn't be replaced, pledged total allegiance to their new Führer, and Hitler's control was now absolute. Life in Germany changed violently. Freedom of the press, expression, and public assembly were suspended. Jews were initially branded and their businesses boycotted. And eventually, Hitler would go on to have 6 million Jewish men, women, and children killed in concentration camps. Hundreds of thousands of people were forced into sterilization for physical and mental imperfections. The Hitler Youth became a way to brainwash the young. Boys were trained to fight and returned home from camp violent. Girls were told their purpose was to have many pure Aryan children, and they would sometimes return from camp pregnant. When their parents were understandably horrified, their children would threaten to turn them over to the Gestapo for standing in the way of Germany's greatness. The standard greeting changed, and you could be sent to a concentration camp for not using it. This way, it seemed like everyone was a Nazi supporter. If you dared oppose Hitler or speak out against him in any way, you also would be sent to a concentration camp. German nationalism captivated the young Adolf. Extreme ideology and anti-Semitism festered in him as a young man living a hard life on the streets. Germany's defeat in the First World War filled him with hatred and a thirst for vengeance. A political movement that treated him like a god, and hundreds of thousands looking up to him as their savior, made him a megalomaniac. And soon, his aggressive foreign policies would drag the world into a second tragic global conflict, otherwise known as
Is World War II next?
Yeah. Technically, I think we got to do the Russian Revolution, but if people wanted to do World War II first, obviously we'll do that. But
I feel like it kind of makes sense after we've done Hitler. But
because the Russian Revolution was before this.
Oh,
The Russian
okay.
Revolution was 1917 to 1923, 1919 to 1923. I don't know.
We'll see.
I don't know.
Imagine
What did you
going
think?
Imagine going to summer camp and coming home pregnant at 14 and your mum being buzzing. What?
No, I don't think the parents were fuming. He said.
Oh, I thought
They
you
said,
said the
but-
parents were happy because it was like.
No, the
doing what
parents
the
are
country
fuming,
wanted.
but their children was like they're standing in the way of
Oh.
because the children have been brainwashed in it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. What did you think?
Interesting. There's stuff that I didn't know. I didn't know that the French killed loads of German
Yeah, to be fair, I didn't know that either.
people.
I'd know. Yeah, it's weird that isn't more common knowledge, and you can see why that probably would be. Like you want the Germans to be the bad guys, don't you? You don't want fucking.
Yeah, but
Different.
I mean, I don't know how to word this. It's kind of like irrelevant because what the Germans did was worse than that anyway.
Well, yeah, but you can't just be like, you're lucky it was close to World War II because otherwise that would have been really bad. I don't know. I really enjoyed that. I've got to be honest, right? I can't see why it's banned. Like it's so
No,
bad
I
that it's.
understand why it's banned.
For those that don't know, I'm on a VPN at the minute, but it's banned in the UK. Like you can't watch this, and I think it's terrible that you can't watch it. Do it.
Because like obviously we did this in school and stuff, and like watching something that we've not seen before and you can't get in the UK to watch, and we've learnt something new about it.
Exactly, and he hasn't even used the swastika. Do you know what I mean?
I thought you did in.
Did he use the swastika? Oh, he did. Okay, fair
Is
enough.
that why?
Yeah, you're not allowed to have the swastika over here because you just can't.
Huh.
This is the problem. You know when we say, "Oh, we're a free country," little things like that make me think, we're not that.
But you can't even watch a video with it in it.
Yeah, you can't even watch. Yeah,
anyway.
you can't even watch an educational video about something that factually happened. Like, I don't know. That's a long conversation, eh? But that's why when you remember when I was ranting a few weeks ago about them people on about the NHS talking about we're one of the only free countries on the planet. I'm like, we're not even a free country. Like, I don't know, just piss me off. I rant so much. Like, there's so many British people over here, right, that thoroughly believe that we are a free country, and we are to an extent, but not to the extent like America is, where you have complete freedom of speech. And I don't know. It just annoys me that people don't know that. Like,
I feel like I never really thought about it.
Yeah, it's
until things that you say, and I'm like, oh, are we
Yeah.
not allowed to do that?
Yeah, when people are arrested for hate speech, you know, you have people come and knock at your door and be like, oh, you've posted this online and it's been considered hate speech, and you have a court. You have to go to court. Like, why is this North Korea? Like, do you know what I mean? Sorry, did I speak out? Fuck me. Sorry. Right, rant over.
Don't it? Every time we go off on a tangent at the end, don't we?
But thanks for joining us, guys, honestly. It means a lot. Hit 8k yesterday as well, so we appreciate that.
Yay! 10k soon. It's coming.
10k soon. 10k before a certain period of time.
My birthday.
When do you,
End of May.
End of May.
Say you've been trying to guess the date then, because you get it wrong every time.
Yeah, I knew that. But thanks for joining us, guys. Peace out. Like, comment, subscribe.